the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 232, Draupadi Satyabhama Samvada Parva continued. Draupadi said, I shall now indicate to thee, for attracting the heart of thy husbands, a way that is free from deceit. By adopting it duly, dear friend, thou wilt be able to draw away thy lord from other females. In all the worlds, including that of the celestials, there is no god equal, O Satyabhama, unto the husband. When he is gratified with thee, thou mayst have from thy husband every object of desire. When he is angry, all these may be lost. It is from her husband that the wife obtaineth offspring and various articles of enjoyment. It is from thy husband that thou mayst have handsome beds and seats, and robes and garlands, and perfumes, and great fame, and heaven itself hereafter. One cannot obtain happiness here by means that are easy. Indeed, the woman that is chaste, obtains weal with woe. Always adore Krishna therefore with friendship, and love physical sufferings. And do thou also act in a way, by offering handsome seats and excellent garlands and various perfumes and prompt service, that he may be devoted to thee, thinking, I am truly loved by her. Hearing the voice of thy Lord at the gate, rise thou up from thy seat and stay in readiness within the room. And as soon as thou seest him enter thy chamber, worship him by promptly offering him a seat and water to wash his feet. And even when he commands a maidservant to do anything, get thou up and do it thyself. Let Krishna understand this temper of thy mind and know that thou adorest him with all thy heart. And, O Satyabhama, whatever thy Lord speaketh before thee, do not blab of it even if it may not deserve concealment, for if any of thy co-wives were to speak of it unto Vasudeva, he might be irritated with thee. Feed thou by every means in thy power those that are dear and devoted to thy Lord and always seek his good. Thou shouldst however always keep thyself aloof from those that are hostile to and against thy Lord and seek to do him injury, as also from those that are addicted to deceit. Foregoing all excitement and carelessness in the presence of men, conceal thy inclinations by observing silence, and thou shouldst not stay or converse in private even with thy sons, Pradyumna and Samva. Thou shouldst form attachments with only such females as are high-born and sinless and devoted to their lords, and thou shouldst always shun women that are wrathful, addicted to drinks, gluttonous, thievish, wicked and fickle. Behavior such as this is reputable and productive of prosperity, and while it is capable of neutralizing hostility, it also leadeth to heaven. Therefore, worship thou thy husband, decking thyself in costly garlands and ornaments and smearing thyself with unguents and excellent perfumes. Thus ends the 232nd section in the Draupadi Satyabhama Samvada Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 233, Draupadi Satyabhama Samvada Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, Then Kesava, the slayer of Madhu, also called Janardana, having conversed on various agreeable themes with the illustrious sons of Pandu and with those Brahmanas that were headed by Markandeya, and having bid them farewell, mounted his car and called for Satyabhama. And Satyabhama then, having embraced the daughter of Drupada, addressed her in these cordial words expressive of her feelings towards her, O Krishna, let there be no anxiety, no grief for thee. Thou hast no cause to pass thy nights in sleeplessness, for thou wilt surely obtain back the earth subjugated by thy husbands, who are all equal unto the gods. O thou of black eyes, women endued with such disposition and possessed of such auspicious marks, can never suffer misfortune long. It hath been heard by me that thou shalt, with thy husbands, certainly enjoy this earth peacefully and freed from all thorns. And, O daughter of Drupada, thou shalt certainly behold the earth ruled by Yudhishthira after the sons of Dhritarashtra have been slain, and the deeds of their hostility avenged. Thou wilt soon behold those wives of the Kurus, who, deprived of sense by pride, laughed at thee while on thy way to exile, themselves reduced to a state of helplessness and despair. Know them all, O Krishna, that did thee any injury while thou wert afflicted, to have already gone to the abode of Yama, thy brave sons, Prativindya by Yudhishthira and Sutasoma by Bhima, and Shrutakirman by Arjuna, and Satanika by Nakula, and Shrutasena begot by Sahadeva, are well and have become skilled in weapons. Like Abhimanyu they are all staying at Dwaravati, delighted with the place. And Subhadra also, cheerfully and with her whole soul, looketh after them like thee, and like thee joyeth in them and deriveth much happiness from them. Indeed, she grieveth in their griefs and joyeth in their joys. And the mother of Pradyumna also loveth them with her whole soul. And Kesava with his sons Banu and others watcheth over them with especial affection. And my mother-in-law is ever attentive in feeding and clothing them. And the Andakas and Vrishnis, including Rama and others, regard them with affection. And, O beautiful lady, their affection for thy sons is equal unto what they feel for Pradyumna. Having said these agreeable and truthful and cordial words, Satyabhama desired to go to Vasudeva's car. And the wife of Krishna then walked round the queen of the Pandavas. And having done so, the beautiful Satyabhama mounted the car of Krishna. And the chief of the Yadavas, comforting Draupadi with a smile and causing the Pandavas to return, set out for his own city, with swift horses yoked unto his car. Thus ends the 233rd section in the Draupadi Satyabhama Samvada Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 234, Ghoshayatra Parva. Janamejaya said, while those foremost of men the sons of Pritha were passing their days in the forest exposed to the inclemencies of the winter, the summer, the wind and the sun, what did they do, O Brahmana, after they had reached the lake and woods going by the name of Dvaita? Vaisampayana said, after the sons of Pandu had arrived at that lake, they chose a residence that was removed from the habitations of men. And they began to roam through delightful woods and ever-charming mountains and picturesque river valleys. And after they had taken up their residence there, many venerable ascetics endued with Vedic lore often came to see them. And those foremost of men always received those Ved-knowing rishis with great respect. And one day there came unto the Kaurava princes a certain Brahmana who was well known on earth for his powers of speech. And having conversed with the Pandavas for a while, he went away as pleased him, to the court of the royal son of Vichitravirya. Received with respect by that chief of the Kurus, the old king, the Brahmana took his seat, and asked by the monarch he began to talk of the sons of Dharma, Pavana, Indra and of the twins, all of whom having fallen into severe misery, had become emaciated and reduced, owing to exposure to wind and sun. And that Brahmana also talked of Krishna who was overwhelmed with suffering and who then had become perfectly helpless, although she had heroes for her lords. And hearing the words of that Brahmana, the royal son of Vichitravirya became afflicted with grief, at the thought of those princes of royal lineage then swimming in a river of sorrow. His inmost soul afflicted with sorrow and trembling all over with sighs, he quieted himself with a great effort, remembering that everything had arisen from his own fault. And the monarch said, Alas, how is it that Yudhishthira, who is the eldest of my sons, who is truthful and pious and virtuous in his behavior, who hath not a foe, who had formerly slept on beds made of soft ranku skins, sleepeth now on the bare ground? Alas, wakened formerly by Sutas and Magadas and other singers with his praises, melodiously recited every morning, that prince of the Kuru race, equal unto Indra himself, is now waked from the bare ground towards the small hours of the night by a multitude of birds. How doth Vrikodara, reduced by exposure to wind and sun and filled with wrath, sleep in the presence of the princess of Panchala, on the bare ground, unfit as he is to suffer such lot. Perhaps also, the intelligent Arjuna, who is incapable of bearing pain, and who, though obedient to the will of Yudhishthira, yet feeleth himself to be pierced over all by the remembrance of his wrongs, sleepeth not in the night. Beholding the twins and Krishna and Yudhishthira and Bhima plunged in misery, Arjuna without doubt, sigheth like a serpent of fierce energy and sleepeth not, from wrath, in the night. The twins also, who are even like a couple of blessed celestials in heaven, sunk in woe though deserving of bliss, without doubt pass their nights in restless wakefulness, restrained from avenging their wrongs by virtue and truth. The mighty son of the wind god, who is equal to the wind god himself in strength, without doubt, sigheth and restraineth his wrath, being tied through his elder brother in the bonds of truth. Superior in battle to all warriors, he now lieth quiet on the ground, restrained by virtue and truth, and burning to slay my children, he bideth his time. The cruel words that Dusasana spoke after Yudhishthira had been deceitfully defeated at dice, have sunk deep into Vrikodara's heart, and are consuming him, like a burning bundle of straw consuming a fagot of dry wood. The son of Dharma never acted sinfully, Dhananjaya also always obeyed him, but Bhima's wrath, in consequence of a life of exile, is increasing like a conflagration assisted by the wind. That hero, burning with rage such as that, squeezeth his hands and breatheth hot and fierce sighs, as if consuming therewith my sons and grandsons. The wielder of the Gandiva and Vrikodara when angry, are like Yama and Kala themselves, scattering their shafts, which are like unto thunderbolts, they exterminate in battle the ranks of the enemy. Alas Duryodhana, and Sakuni, and the Suta's son, and Dusasana also of wicked soul, in robbing the Pandavas of their kingdom by means of dice, seem to behold the honey alone without marking the terrible ruin. A man having acted rightly or wrongly, expecteth the fruit of those acts. The fruit, however confounding him, paralyzes him fully. How can man, thereof, have salvation? If the soil is properly tilled, and the seed sown therein, and if the god of rain showereth in season, still the crop may not grow. This is what we often hear. Indeed, how could this saying be true unless, as I think, it be that everything here is dependent on destiny? The gambler's Sakuni hath behaved deceitfully towards the son of Pandu, who ever acted honestly. From affection for my wicked sons I also have acted similarly. Alas, it is owing to this that the hour of destruction hath come for the Kurus. Oh, perhaps, what is inevitable must happen. The wind impelled or not will move. The woman that conceives will bring forth. Darkness will be dispelled at dawn, and day disappear at evening. Whatever may be earned by us or others, whether people spend it or not, when the time cometh, those possessions of ours do bring on misery. Why then do people become so anxious about earning wealth? If indeed what is acquired is the result of fate, then should it be protected so that it may not be divided, nor lost little by little, nor permitted to flow out at once, for if unprotected, it may break into 100 fragments. But whatever the character of our possessions, our acts in the world are never lost. Behold what the energy of Arjuna is, who went into the abode of Indra from the woods. Having mastered the 4 kinds of celestial weapons he hath come back into this world. What man is there who, having gone to heaven in his human form, wisheth to come back? This would never have been but because he seeth innumerable Kurus to be at the point of death, afflicted by time. The bowman is Arjuna, capable of wielding the bow with his left hand as well. The bow he wieldeth is the Gandiva of fierce impetus. He hath, besides, those celestial weapons of his. Who is there that would bear the energy of these 3? hearing these words of the monarch, the son of Suvala, going unto Duryodhana, who was then sitting with Karna, told them everything in private. And Duryodhana, though possessed of little sense, was filled with grief at what he heard. Thus ends the 234th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 235, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, hearing those words of Dhritarashtra, Sakuni, when the opportunity presented itself, aided by Karna, spoke unto Duryodhana these words, having exiled the heroic Pandavas by thy own prowess, O Bharata, rule thou this earth without a rival, like the slayer of Samvara ruling the heaven. O monarch, the kings of the east, the south, the west, and the north, have all been made tributary to thee. O Lord of earth, that blazing prosperity which had before paid her court to the sons of Pandu, hath now been acquired by thee along with thy brothers. That blazing prosperity, O king, which we not many days ago saw with heavy hearts in Yudhishthira at Indraprastha, is today seen by us to be owned by thee, she having, O mighty armed monarch, been snatched by thee from the royal Yudhishthira by force of intellect alone. O slayer of hostile heroes, all the kings of the earth now living in subjection to thee, await thy commands, as they did before under Yudhishthira, awaiting his. O monarch, the goddess earth with her boundless extent with girth of seas, with her mountains and forests, and towns and cities and mines, and decked with woodlands and hills is now thine. Adored by the Brahmanas and worshipped by the kings, thou blazest forth, O king, in consequence of thy prowess, like the sun among the gods in heaven. Surrounded by the Kurus, O king, like Yama by the Rudra, or Vasava by the Maruts, thou shinest, O monarch, like the moon among the stars. Let us therefore, O king, go and look at the sons of Pandu, them who are now divested of prosperity, them who never obeyed commands, them who never owed subjection. It hath been heard by us, O monarch, that the Pandavas are now living on the banks of the lake called Dvaitavana, with a multitude of Brahmanas, having the wilderness for their home. Go thither, O king, in all thy prosperity, scorching the son of Pandu with the sight of thy glory, like the sun scorching everything with his hot rays. Thyself a sovereign and they divested of sovereignty, thyself in prosperity and they divested of it, thyself possessing affluence and they in poverty, behold now, O king, the sons of Pandu. Let the sons of Pandu behold thee like Yayati, the son of Nahusha, accompanied by a large train of followers and enjoying bliss that is great. O king, that blazing prosperity which is seen by both one's friends and foes, is regarded as well bestowed. What happiness can be more complete than that which he enjoyeth who while himself in prosperity, looketh upon his foes in adversity, like a person on the hilltop looking down upon another crawling on the earth. O tiger among kings, the happiness that one derives from beholding his foes in grief, is greater than what one may derive from the acquisition of offering or wealth or kingdom. What happiness will not be his who, himself in affluence, will cast his eyes on Dhananjaya attired in barks and deer skins? Let thy wife dressed in costly robes look at the woeful Krishna clad in barks and deer skins, and enhance the latter's grief. Let the daughter of Drupada reproach herself and her life, divested as she is of wealth, for the sorrow that she will feel upon beholding thy wife, decked in ornaments, will be far greater than what she had felt in the midst of the assembly when Dusasana had dragged her there. Vaisampayana continued, having thus spoken unto the king, Karna and Sakuni both remained silent, O Janamejaya, after their discourse was over. Thus ends the 235th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 236, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, having heard these words of Karna, King Duryodhana became highly pleased. Soon after, however, The prince became melancholy and addressing the speaker said, "What thou tellest me, O Karna, is always before my mind. I shall not, however, obtain permission to repair to the place where the Pandavas are residing. King Dhritarashtra is always grieving for those heroes." Indeed, the king regarded the sons of Pandu to have become more powerful than before in consequence of their ascetic austerities. Or, if the king understands our motives, he will never, having regard to the future, grant us permission, for, O thou of great effulgence, we can have no other business in the woods of Dwaitavana than the destruction of the Pandavas in exile. Thou knowest the words that Kshatri spoke to me, to thyself, and to the son of Suvala, at the time of the match at dice. Reflecting upon all those words as also upon all those lamentations, that he and others indulged in, I cannot make up my mind as to whether I should or should not go. I shall certainly be highly pleased if I cast my eyes on Bhima and Falguna passing their days in pain with Krishna in the woods. The joy that I may feel in obtaining the sovereignty of the entire earth is nothing to that which will be mine upon beholding the sons of Pandu attired in barks of trees and deer skins. What joy can be greater, O Karna, that will be mine upon beholding the daughter of Drupada dressed in red rags in the woods? If King Yudhishthira and Bhima, the sons of Pandu, behold me graced with great affluence, then only shall I have attained the great end of my life. I do not, however, see the means by which I may repair to those woods, by which, in fact, I may obtain the king's permission to go thither. Contrive thou therefore some skilful plan, with Suvala's son and Dusasana, by which we may go to those woods. I also, making up my mind today as to whether I should go or not, approach the presence of the king tomorrow. And when I shall be sitting with Bhishma, that best of the Kurus thou wilt, with Sakuni propose the pretext which thou mayst have contrived. Hearing then the words of Bhishma and of the king on the subject of our journey, I will settle everything beseeching our grandfather. Saying, so be it, they then all went away to their respective quarters. And as soon as the night had passed away, Karna came to the king. And coming to him, Karna smilingly spoke unto Duryodhana, saying, a plan hath been contrived by me. Listen to it, O Lord of men. Our herds are now waiting in the woods of Dwaitavana in expectation of thee. Without doubt, we may all go there under the pretext of supervising our cattle stations, for, O monarch, it is proper that kings should frequently repair to their cattle stations. If this be the motive put forth, thy father, O prince, will certainly grant thee permission. And while Duryodhana and Karna were thus conversing laughingly, Sakuni addressed them and said, this plan, free from difficulties, was what I also saw for going thither. The king will certainly grant us permission, or even send us thither of his own accord. Our herds are now all waiting in the woods of Dwaitavana expecting thee. Without doubt, we may all go there under the pretext of supervising our cattle stations. They then all three laughed together, and gave their hands unto one another. And having arrived at that conclusion, they went to see the chief of Kurus. Thus ends the 236th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 237, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, they then all saw King Dhritarashtra, O Janamejaya, and having seen him, enquired after his welfare, and were in return, asked about their welfare. Then a cowherd named Samanga, who had been instructed beforehand by them, approaching the king, spoke unto him of the cattle. Then the son of Radha and Sakuni, O king, addressing Dhritarashtra, that foremost of monarchs, said, O Kaurava, our cattle stations are now in a delightful place. The time for their tail as also for marking the calves hath come. And, O monarch, this also is an excellent season for thy son to go a-hunting. It behoveth thee, therefore, to grant permission to Duryodhana to go thither. Dhritarashtra replied, "The chase of the deer, as also the examination of cattle, is very proper, O child. I think, indeed, that the herdsmen are not to be trusted. But we have heard that those tigers among men, the Pandavas, are now staying in the vicinity of those cattle stations. I think, therefore, ye should not go thither yourselves. Defeated by deceitful means, they are now living in the deep forest in great suffering. O Radheya, they are mighty warriors and naturally able, they are now devoted to ascetic austerities. King Yudhishthira will not suffer his wrath to be awakened, but Bhimasena is naturally passionate. The daughter of Yajnasena is energy's self. Full of pride and folly, ye are certain to give offense. Endued with ascetic merit, she will certainly consume you, or perhaps, those heroes, armed with swords and weapons. Nor, if from force of numbers, ye seek to injure them in any respect, that will be a highly improper act, although, as I think, ye will never be able to succeed." The mighty armed Dhananjaya hath returned thence to the forest. While unaccomplished in arms, Vivatsu had subjugated the whole earth before. A mighty warrior as he is and accomplished in arms now, will he not be able to slay you all? Or, if in obedience to my words, ye behave carefully, having repaired thither, ye will not be able to live happily there in consequence of the anxiety ye will feel owing to a state of continued trustlessness. Or, some soldier of yours may do some injury to Yudhishthira, and that unpremeditated act will be ascribed to your fault. Therefore, let some faithful men proceed there for the work of tale. I do not think it is proper for thee, Bharata, to go thither thyself." Sakuni said, "The eldest of the sons of Pandu is cognizant of morality. He pledged in the midst of the assembly, O Bharata, that he would live for 12 years in the forest. The other sons of Pandu are all virtuous and obedient to Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira himself, the son of Kunti, will never be angry with us. Indeed, we desire very much to go on a hunting expedition, and will avail of that opportunity for supervising the tail of our cattle. We have no mind to see the sons of Pandu. We will not go to that spot where the Pandavas have taken up their residence, and consequently no exhibition of misconduct can possibly arise on our part." Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Sakuni, "That lord of men, Dhritarashtra, granted permission, but not very willingly, to Duryodhana and his counsellors to go to the place. And permitted by the monarch, the Bharata prince born of Gandhari started, accompanied by Karna and surrounded by a large host. And he was also accompanied by Dusasana and Suvila, son of great intelligence, and by many other brothers of his, and by ladies in thousands. And as the mighty armed prince started for beholding the lake that was known by the name of Dvaitavana, the citizens of Hastina, also accompanied by their wives, began to follow him to that forest. 8,000 cars, 30,000 elephants, 9,000 horses, and many thousands of foot soldiers, and shops and pavilions and traders, bards and men trained in the chase by hundreds and thousands followed the prince. And as the king started, followed by this large concourse of people, the uproar that was caused there resembled, O king, the deep tumult of the raging winds in the rainy season. And reaching the lake Dvaitavana with all his followers and vehicles, King Duryodhana took up his quarters at the distance of 4 miles from it. Thus ends the 237th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 238, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, King Duryodhana then, moving from forest to forest, at last approached the cattle stations, and encamped his troops and his attendants, selecting a well-known and delightful spot that abounded in water and trees, and that possessed every convenience, constructed an abode for him. And near enough to the royal residence they also erected separate abodes for Karna and Sakuni and the brothers of the king. And the king beheld his cattle by hundreds and thousands, and examining their limbs and marks supervised their tally. And he caused the calves to be marked and took note of those that required to be tamed. And he also counted those kin whose calves had not yet been weaned. And completing the task of tally by marking and counting every calf that was 3 years old, the Kuru prince, surrounded by the cowherds, began to sport and wander cheerfully. And the citizens also and the soldiers by thousands began to sport as best pleased them, in those woods, like the celestials. And the herdsmen, well skilled in singing and dancing and instrumental music, and virgins decked in ornaments, began to minister to the pleasures of Dhritarashtra's son. And the king, surrounded by the ladies of the royal household, began cheerfully to distribute wealth and food and drinks of various kinds amongst those that sought to please him, according to their desires. And the king, attended by all his followers, began also to slay hyenas and buffaloes and deer and gayals and bears and boars all around. And the king, piercing by his shafts those animals by thousands in deep forest, caused the deer to be caught in the more delightful parts of the woods, drinking milk and enjoying, O Bharata, various other delicious articles, and beholding, as he proceeded, many delightful forests and woods swarming with bees inebriate with floral honey and resounding with the notes of the peacock, the king at last reached the sacred lake of Dwaitavana. And the spot which the king reached swarmed with bees inebriate with floral honey, and echoed with the mellifluous notes of the blue-throated jay, and was shaded by saptakadas and punagas and vakulas. And the king, graced with high prosperity, proceeded thither like the thunder-wielding chief of the celestials himself. And, O thou best of the Kuru race, King Yudhishthira the just, endued with high intelligence, was then, O monarch, residing in the vicinity of that lake at will, and celebrating with his wedded wife, the daughter of Drupada, the diurnal sacrifice called Rajarshi, according to the ordinance sanctioned for the celestials and persons living in the wilderness. And, O monarch, having reached that spot, Duryodhana commanded his men by thousands, saying, Let pleasure houses be constructed soon. Thus commanded, those doers of the king's behests, replying to the Kuru chief with the words, So be it, went towards the banks of the lake for constructing pleasure houses. And as the picked soldiers of Dhritarashtra's son, having reached the region of the lake, were about to enter the gates of the wood, a number of Gandharvas appeared and forbade them to enter. For, O monarch, the king of the Gandharvas, accompanied by his followers, had come thither beforehand, from the abode of Kuvara. And the king of the Gandharvas had also been accompanied by the several tribes of Apsaras, as also by the sons of the celestials. And intent upon sport, he had come to that place for merriment, and occupying it, had closed it against all comers. And the attendants of the Kuru king, finding the lake closed by the king of the Gandharvas, went back, O monarch, to where the royal Duryodhana was. And Duryodhana, having heard these words, dispatched a number of his warriors difficult of being subjugated in battle, commanding them to drive away the Gandharvas. And those warriors who formed the vanguard of the Kuru army, hearing these words of the king, went back to the lake of Dwaitavana, and addressing the Gandharvas said, The mighty king Duryodhana the son of Dhritarashtra is coming hither for sport. Stand ye aside therefore. Thus addressed by them, O king, the Gandharvas laughed and replied unto those men in these harsh words, Your wicked king Duryodhana must be destitute of sense. How else could he have thus commanded us that are dwellers of heaven, as if indeed we were his servants? Without forethought, ye also are doubtless on the point of death, for senseless idiots as ye are, ye have dared to bring us his message. Return ye soon to where that king of the Kurus is, or else go this very day to the abode of Yama. Thus addressed by the Gandharvas, the advanced guard of the king's army ran back to the place where the royal son of Dhritarashtra was. Thus ends the 238th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 239, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, "Those soldiers then, O king, all went back to Duryodhana and repeated to him every word that the Gandharvas had said. And, O Bharata, finding that his soldiers had been opposed by the Gandharvas, Dhritarashtra's son, endued with energy, was filled with rage. And the king addressed his soldiers, saying, 'Punish these wretches who desire to oppose my will, even if they have come hither to sport, accompanied by all the celestials with him of 100 sacrifices.'" And hearing these words of Duryodhana, the sons and officers of Dhritarashtra, all endued with great strength, as also warriors by thousands, began to arm themselves for battle. And filling the 10 sides with loud leonine roars and rushing at those Gandharvas that had been guarding the gates, they entered the forest. And as the Kuru soldiers entered the forest, other Gandharvas came up and forbade them to advance. And though gently forbidden by the Gandharvas to advance, the Kuru soldiers, without regarding them in the least, began to enter that mighty forest. And when those rangers of the sky found that the warriors of Dhritarashtra along with their king could not be stopped by words, they all went to their king Chitrasena and represented everything unto him. And when Chitrasena, the king of the Gandharvas, came to know all this, he became filled with rage, alluding to the Kuru, and commanded his followers, saying, "Punish these wretches of wicked behavior." And, O Bharata, when the Gandharvas were so commanded by Chitrasena, they rushed weapons in hand, towards the Dhritarashtra ranks. And beholding the Gandharvas impetuously rushing towards them with upraised weapons, the Kuru warriors precipitously fled in all directions at the very sight of Duryodhana. And beholding the Kuru soldiers all flying from the field with their backs to the foe, the heroic Radeya alone fled not. And seeing the mighty host of the Gandharvas rushing towards him, Radeya checked them by a perfect shower of arrows. And the Suta's son, owing to his extreme lightness of hand, struck hundreds of Gandharvas with churapras and arrows and bhallas and various weapons made of bones and steel. And that mighty warrior, causing the heads of numerous Gandharvas to roll down within a short time, made the ranks of Chitrasena to yell in anguish. And although they were slaughtered in great numbers by Karna endued with great intelligence, yet the Gandharvas returned to the charge by hundreds and thousands. And in consequence of the swarms of Chitrasena's warriors rushing impetuously to the field, the earth itself became soon covered by the Gandharva host. Then King Duryodhana, and Sakuni, the son of Suvila, and Dusasana, and Vikarna, and other sons of Dhritarashtra, seated on cars the clatter of whose wheels resembled the roars of Garuda, returned to the charge, following the lead of Karna, and began to slaughter that host. And desirous of supporting Karna, these princes invested the Gandharva army with a large number of cars and a strong body of horses. Then the whole of the Gandharva host began to fight with the Kauravas. And the encounter that took place between the contending hosts was fierce in the extreme and might make one's hair stand on end. The Gandharvas, at last, afflicted with the shafts of the Kuru army, seemed to be exhausted. And the Kauravas, beholding the Gandharvas so afflicted, sent up a loud sound. And seeing the Gandharva host yielding to fear, the angry Chitrasena sprang from his seat, resolved to exterminate the Kuru army. And conversant with various modes of warfare, he waged on the fight, aided by his weapons of illusion. And the Kaurava warriors were then all deprived of their senses by the illusion of Chitrasena. And then, O Bharata, it seemed that every warrior of the Kuru army was fallen upon and surrounded by 10 Gandharvas. And attacked with great vigor, the Kuru host was greatly afflicted and struck with panic. O king, all of them that liked to live, fled from the field. But while the entire Dhritarashtra host broke and fled, Karna, that offspring of the sun, stood there, O king, immovable as a hill. Indeed, Duryodhana and Karna and Sakuni, the son of Suvala, all fought with the Gandharvas, although every one of them was much wounded and mangled in the encounter. All the Gandharvas then, desirous of slaying Karna, rushed together by hundreds and thousands towards Karna. And those mighty warriors, desirous of slaying the Suta's son, surrounded him on all sides, with swords and battle axes and spears. And some cut down the yoke of his car, and some his flagstaff, and some the shaft of his car, and some his horses, and some his charioteer. And some cut down his umbrella, and some the wooden fender round his car, and some the joints of his car. It was thus that many thousands of Gandharvas, together attacking his car, broke it into minute fragments. And while his car was thus attacked, Karna leaped therefrom with sword and shield in hand, and mounting on Vikarna's car, urged the steeds for saving himself. Thus ends the 239th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 240, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after that great warrior Karna had been routed by the Gandharvas, the whole of the Kuru army, O monarch, fled from the field in the very sight of Dhritarashtra's son. And beholding all his troops flying from the field of battle with their back to the foe, King Duryodhana refused to fly. Seeing the mighty host of the Gandharvas rushing towards him, that repressor of foes poured down upon them a thick shower of arrows. The Gandharvas, however, without regarding that arrowy shower, and desirous also of slaying him, surrounded that car of his. And by means of their arrows, they cut off into fragments the yoke, the shaft, the fenders, the flagstaff, the threefold bamboo poles, and the principal turret of his car. And they also slew his charioteer and horses, hacking them to pieces. And when Duryodhana, deprived of his car, fell on the ground, the strong-armed Chitrasena rushed towards him and seized him in such a way that it seemed his life itself was taken. And after the Kuru king had been seized, the Gandharvas, surrounding Dusasana, who was seated on his car, also took him prisoner. And some Gandharvas seized Vivinseti and Gitrasena, and some Vinda and Anuvinda, while others seized all the ladies of royal household. And the warriors of Duryodhana, who were routed by the Gandharvas, joining those who had fled first, approached the Pandavas, who were living in the vicinity. And after Duryodhana had been made captive, the vehicles, the shops, the pavilions, the carriages, and the draught animals, all were made over to the Pandavas for protection. And those soldiers said, the mighty armed son of Dhritarashtra, possessed of great strength and handsome mien, is being taken away captive by the Gandharvas. Ye sons of Pritha, follow them. Dusasana, Durvishasa, Durmukha, and Durjaya, are all being led away as captives in chains by the Gandharvas, as also all the ladies of the royal household. Crying thus, the followers of Duryodhana, afflicted with grief and melancholy, approached Yudhishthira, desirous of effecting the release of the king. Bhima then answered those old attendants of Duryodhana who, afflicted with grief and melancholy, were thus soliciting the aid of Yudhishthira, saying, what we should have done with great efforts, arraying ourselves in line of battle, supported by horses and elephants, hath, indeed, been done by the Gandharvas. They that come hither for other purposes, have been overtaken by consequences they had not foreseen. Indeed, this is the result of the evil counsels of a king who is fond of deceitful play. It hath been heard by us that the foe of a person who is powerless, is overthrown by others. The Gandharvas have, in an extraordinary way, illustrated before our eyes the truth of this saying. It seems that there is still fortunately some person in the world who is desirous of doing us good, who hath, indeed, taken upon his own shoulders our pleasant load, although we are sitting idly. The wretch had come hither to cast his eyes on us, himself in prosperity while ourselves are sunk in adversity and emaciated by ascetic austerities and are exposed to wind, cold, and heat. They that imitate the behavior of that sinful and wretched Kaurava, are now beholding his disgrace. He that had instructed Duryodhana to do this, had certainly acted sinfully. That the sons of Kunti are not wicked and sinful, I tell it before you all. And while Bhima, the son of Kunti, was speaking thus in a voice of sarcasm, King Yudhishthira told him, "This is not time for cruel words." Thus ends the 248th section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 241, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Yudhishthira said, "O child, why dost thou use language such as this, towards the frightened Kurus, who are now in adversity and who have come to us, solicitous of protection? O Vrikodara, disunions and disputes do take place amongst those that are connected in blood. Hostilities such as these do go on. But the honor of the family is never suffered to be interfered with. If any stranger seeketh to insult the honor of a family, they that are good never tolerate such insult coming from the stranger. The wicked-souled king of the Gandharvas knoweth that we are living here from some time. Yet disregarding us, he hath done this deed which is so disagreeable to us. O exalted one, from this forcible seizure of Duryodhana and from this insult to the ladies of our house by a stranger, our family honor is being destroyed. Therefore, ye tigers among men, arise and arm yourselves without delay for rescuing those that have sought our protection and for guarding the honor of our family. Ye tigers among men, let Arjuna and the twins and thyself also that art brave and unvanquished, liberate Duryodhana, who is even now being taken away a captive. Ye foremost of warriors, these blazing cars, furnished with golden flagstaffs and every kind of weapons belonging to Dhritarashtra's sons, are ready here. With Indrasena and other charioteers skilled in arms, for guiding them, ride ye on these ever-furnished cars of deep rattle. And riding on these, exert ye with activity for fighting with the Gandharvas to liberate Duryodhana. Even an ordinary Kshatriya, amongst those that are here, would to the height of his power, protect one that hath come hither for refuge. What then, O Vrikodara, shall I say of thee? Entreated for assistance in such words as, O hasten to my aid. Who is there, amongst those standing around me, that is high-souled enough to assist even his foe, beholding him seeking shelter with joined hands? The bestowal of a boon, sovereignty, and the birth of a son are sources of great joy. But, ye sons of Pandu, the liberation of a foe from distress is equal to all the three put together. What can be a source of greater joy to you than that Duryodhana sunk in distress seeketh his very life as depending on the might of your arms? O Vrikodara, if the vow in which I am engaged had been over, there is little doubt that I would myself have run to his aid. Strive thou by all means, O Bharata, to liberate Duryodhana by the arts of conciliation. If, however, the king of the Gandharvas cannot be managed by the arts of conciliation, then must thou try to rescue Suyodhana by lightly skirmishing with the foe. But if the chief of the Gandharvas do not let the Kurus off even then, they must be rescued by crushing the foe by all means. O Vrikodara, this is all I can tell thee now, for my vow hath been begun and is not ended yet. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of Ajatasatru, Dhananjaya pledged himself, from respect for these commands of his superior, to liberate the Kauravas. And Arjuna said, if the Gandharvas do not set the Dhritarashtras free peacefully, the earth shall this day drink the blood of the king of the Gandharvas. And hearing that pledge of the truth-speaking Arjuna, the Kauravas then, O king, regained the lost tenor of their minds. Thus ends the 241st section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 242, Ghoshayatra Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, hearing the words of Yudhishthira, those bulls among men, headed by Bhimasena, rose up with faces beaming in joy. And those mighty warriors, O Bharata, then began to case themselves in impenetrable mail that were besides variegated with pure gold, and armed themselves with celestial weapons of various kinds. And the Pandavas thus cased in mail, and mounted on those chariots furnished with flagstaffs and armed with bows and arrows, looked like blazing fires. And those tigers among warriors, riding upon those well-furnished cars drawn by fleet horses, proceeded to that spot without losing a moment. And beholding those mighty warriors the sons of Pandu thus proceeding together, for the liberation of Duryodhana, the Kuru army sent forth a loud shout. And soon did those rangers of the sky flushed with victory, and those impetuous warriors, the sons of Pandu, fearlessly encounter each other in that forest. The Gandharvas were flushed with success, and beholding the four brave sons of Pandu coming to battle seated on their cars, they all turned back towards the advancing combatants. And the dwellers of the Gandhamadana, beholding the Pandavas looking like blazing guardians of the world provoked to air, stood arrayed in order of battle. And, O Bharata, in accordance with words of King Yudhishthira of great wisdom, the encounter that took place was a skirmish. But when Arjuna, that persecutor of foes, saw that the foolish soldiers of the king of Gandharvas could not be made to understand what was good for them by means of a light skirmish, he addressed those invincible rangers of the skies in a conciliatory tone and said, "Leave ye my brother King Suyodhana." Thus addressed by the illustrious son of Pandu, the Gandharvas, laughing aloud, replied unto him saying, "O child, there is but one in the world whose behests we obey and living under whose rule we pass our days in happiness, O Bharata, we always act as that one only person commanded us. Besides that celestial chief there is none that can command us." Thus addressed by the Gandharvas, Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, replied unto them, saying, "This contact with other people's wives and this hostile encounter with human beings are acts that are both censurable in the king of the Gandharvas and not proper for him. Therefore, leave ye these sons of Dhritarashtra all endued with mighty energy. And liberate ye also these ladies, at the command of King Yudhishthira the just. If ye Gandharvas do not set the sons of Dhritarashtra free peacefully, I shall certainly rescue Suyodhana and his party by exerting my prowess." And speaking unto them thus, Pritha's son, Dhananjaya, capable of wielding the bow with his left hand also, then rained a shower of sharp-pointed sky-ranging shafts upon those rangers of the firmament. Thus attacked, the mighty Gandharvas then encountered the sons of Pandu with a shower of arrows equally thick, and the Pandavas also replied by attacking those dwellers of heaven. And the battle then, O Bharata, that ranged between the active and agile Gandharvas and the impetuous son of Pandu was fierce in the extreme. Thus ends the 242nd section in the Ghoshayatra Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.